This star drove her fans so wild with her singing that the police couldn't control the mob she had created. Welcome to Storytime with the Phantoms of the Opera. The story today is about Thérèse Tietjens, who was a dramatic soprano who lived between 1831 and 1877, and it comes from Anecdotes of Great Musicians, 300 anecdotes and biographical sketches of famous composers and performers by Willie Francis Gates, published in 1895. And it really is full of fun stories. I will be reading more. But for now, are you sitting comfortably? Then let's begin. On the last night of her series of performances at Dublin in 1868, Mademoiselle Tietjens was the recipient of such an ovation as is seldom given even to those petted beings, operatic prime donne. At the close of the aria Ocean, Thou Mighty Monster in Weber's Oberon, the audience rose en masse, some calling for a repetition and others for favourite Irish songs. The uproar continued for 10 or 15 minutes before quiet could be resumed. And then the diva decided to sing the favourite Last Rose of Summer. But the orchestra had no music for the song, and a further delay ensued. Finally, Signor Bettini was seen pushing a small piano out on the stage, and meanwhile Tietjens assisted the conductor to climb up out of the orchestra. In turning the piano around, the slant of the stage caused it to tip over. Now, behind the wings were the rest of the company waiting to go on with the next scene. Among them were several attired as demons. On the upsetting of the piano, out rushed half a dozen devils to set things straight. An unusual occupation for the satanic brood. Again silence was secured, and this time Tietjens finished her song. At its close, the uproarious applause was again indulged in. But after the opera came the climax. The crowd of students who had filled the gallery hastened to the stage entrance, cut the traces of her carriage, and tied in their places 2 long ropes. These were grasped by 2 files of shouting students. The prima donna entered her carriage and was in this way escorted down the street, the crowd continually being augmented by new arrivals. Several had supplied themselves with fireworks, and the whole thing had the effect of a triumphal procession. When the strings of volunteer horses arrived at a corner, owing to there being no agreement concerning the route, one set turned one way and the other in an opposite direction. The result was that the carriage containing Tietjens and her escorts came to a sudden and forcible stop against a building. But after some parley, both teams agreed to unite in the same direction. When finally they arrived at her hotel, the enthusiastic students threw their coats on the pavement from the carriage to the doorway, over which the diva passed to her rooms. The crowd remained around the hotel for over an hour, making continual calls for a song, and their numbers were so great that the police were unable to disperse them. Though Tietjens darkened her rooms to give the impression that she had gone to bed, still they remained. Finally, a police official came up and said that unless Madame would assist in dispersing the crowd, the consequences might be disastrous. So Tietjens consented to try. She went to her window and motioned for silence. Then, addressing the crowd, she said, "I will sing you the Last Rose of Summer, providing you will promise to go home at once and be quiet as mice." Then, for a second time that evening, did she sing the old song. And to the surprise of the people in the hotel, the mob melted away like magic, without another sound. The police official declared that if ever a mob broke out in Ireland, he should send for Mademoiselle Tietjens as the person who would most probably be successful in quelling it. The manager, Colonel Mapleson, and the prima donna had to pay well for the enthusiasm of the admirers. For the jolly Irishman forgot to return the horses they took from the carriage, and the owner sent the bill to the manager. That's all for today, but come back next time for another story from the Phantoms of the Opera, won't you?